I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. So my name is Aaron Sandine. I am the Deputy Director of the Department of Administration, State CIO, and also the Commissioner for this commission. We have a very full agenda as always. I thank everybody for attending. I thank the membership for coming to Flagstaff. Gotta love the weather. It's a beautiful break from Phoenix for sure. So a couple things on the agenda first, just want to kind of talk through. Want to let you know that Lisa Meyerson has now been appointed as the manager of the Enterprise Project Management Office within my organization. I am very pleased and very fortunate to have Lisa and her skill set. And really kind of what happened was there was so much great effort and so much great progress with this office and this commission and this program that we wanted more of that. And so we asked Lisa to really take on a new role within the state to really focus on implementing strong program and project management across the state. And so she's taken on that new role. I've also appointed Justin as the new statewide interoperability coordinator for the state of Arizona. I think most of you know Justin. He's been around since 2008, since we switched PSCC over from the Department of Public Safety over into DOA. Has followed us over into Department of Administration. So really thank Justin for stepping up, taking on this role, continuing to show leadership with this program as we move forward. So if you guys could all just please thank Lisa as well as Justin for their continued leadership. Also, I think many of you know that Susan Nordrum is no longer with us. She did take a job out in the private sector with an organization called Creative Communications. Susan, was an amazing asset with our team. Oh, she's actually sitting in here today. She's joining us one more time. Amazing member of our team. We're very sad to have her leave us, but also very excited for her to have new opportunities and for her to continue to grow. So with that, kind of getting onto the main agenda, there are some comment cards in the back of the room. If anyone would like to make any comment, please fill those out during the meeting and get them up to the staff as we go through this. Please also, as members, as you speak, please identify yourself. We are recording this, and that's what we'll build the notes off of. And with that, Justin, if you can take roll.
Yes, sir. Chairman Sandine.
Here.
Tom Lennon.
I'm here on the phone.
David Azuela.
Present.
Glenn Brown.
Present on the phone.
William Bunce.
Present on the phone.
Steve Campbell. Here. Doug Chappell.
Present on the phone.
Pat Hancock.
Present.
Gilbert Arantia.
Here.
Patrick Quinn.
Here.
Colonel Rayner.
Here.
Brian Savage. Dwayne Woody. And Mike Worrell.
On the phone.
And we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Justin.
Justin, this is Mike Worrell on the phone. We can barely hear you guys.
Let me see if we can improve these microphones here a bit.
So we do have a quorum. Do have a very full agenda. Moving on, first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the meeting from April 16th. If there are no comments, I would request a motion to approve these minutes.
Steve, can all make a motion to approve? Second.
Thank you. Jeff, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. The next one is to talk through and to appoint a new co-chair for the SIEC. So as many of you know, after 9 years, Captain Paul Wilson has resigned as the co-chair of the statewide interoperability executive committee. We would really like to thank Captain Wilson for the extensive contribution he has provided the committee and to the state since being appointed to the SIEC in 2004. His knowledge and experience has been invaluable in helping us to advance the public safety interoperability in Arizona. With Captain Wilson's resignation, the Commission will now need to appoint a new co-chair according to the operating principles defined. So the commission is responsible for appointing 2 members of the SIEC to serve as co-chairs of the committee, who serve until they resign or are replaced by a vote of the quorum of the PSCC. The SIEC co-chairs are responsible for unanimously selecting the other 3 members of the SIEC. So as many of you know, the SIEC is a standing committee of the PSCC. The SIEC is an advisory committee that advises the PSCC on technical and operational communication of interoperability matters. The PSCC takes these recommendations of the SIC into consideration, but is under no obligation to follow its recommendations. The SIEC holds authority over the 700 megahertz, VHF, and UHF interoperability frequencies in Arizona. The current members are Mark Venuti is the co-chair, who's the director of Guardian Medical Transport. Jesse Cooper is the acting bureau administrator, IT project manager for the Phoenix Police Department Communications Bureau. Scott Tillman from Wireless Systems Engineer at AZPSIC, and Pete Weaver is the director of Maricopa County Emergency Management. So we've actually received multiple nominations and letters of recommendation. I would like Mark to come up and just sorry to put you on the hot seat here, but I would like you to come up and kind of talk a little bit more about the SIEC and kind of what the role is and really what the leadership responsibilities are for a co-chair and kind of what you see that continued role to be. And again, sorry to put you on the hot seat, but
Okay, so with that 5 seconds of preparation, and Paul can jump in because I saw he was here. You're not off the hot seat yet, Paul. Well, anyway, like you said, there's the advisory position of the SIEC about some of the technical and operational sides, dealing with like the AIRS usage plan, things like that. There's also, when we looked at some of the other spectrum usage and some of the things going on, that's the side of it, I think, where we really focused on developing the COMLs and the training program and stuff, although some of that came back to the PSCC as well. It's developing how the different spectrums are used and just looking a little more at a focused area with the PSCC. We've tried, since I was brought on to the committee, which I don't remember what year that was. It was after Paul, so it hadn't been quite 9 years. We've tried to keep a balance throughout the state of disciplines and representation geographically. When I first came on, I was also a fire representative. I'm retired Flagstaff Fire now, but we hadn't had any EMS representation on the committee prior to that. So I was an EMS fire guy, replaced the Phoenix fire guy. I think it was Mike Royell, as a matter of fact, who's on fire. But trying to keep that balance of who's represented and still allowed a lot of input from the open floor, so that we listen to everybody. Everybody has a chance to bring up the issues and talk about what we want to have done. So as we move forward, I think that would be important to have that balance. The co-chair, I think it's important that they are available as much as possible. And being a small committee, we have to have all of us there almost every time in order to have a quorum. So there's a lot of participation all of us throughout the committee. But the co-chairs, I think, need to work pretty closely together. I absolutely love working with Paul because he was always on top of everything, and I got to ride his coattails. So as we move forward, I hope I can provide some leadership to the new co-chair coming in. And I think there'll be other vacancies coming up in the not too distant future, I think we know of. So it'll be something that we'll see some changes going on, and we want to keep, I would like to see us keep a focus on that balance of representation.
excellent. Thank you, Mark. Sorry to put you on the
Any
hot seat
questions?
there.
I mean, that was rambling because I didn't put anything together.
Yep. No, it's good.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, earlier this week, I think we sent you kind of a packet of the nominations. The nominations include Chief Derek Arnson, Nogales Police Department, Jesse Cooper, Phoenix Police Department, Interoperable Communications Manager, and SIEC member. Chief Doug Mermott, Phoenix Fire Department, Captain Mike Sacco, Pima County Sheriff Department, and Paul Wright, Information Technology Management, Northwest Fire District. So I know you guys had a little bit of time to kind of look through this. I know kind of understand kind of what the role is and what's that going forward. I'd really like to, open this up to have some discussion amongst the members.
This is Pat Quinn with Tucson Fire Department. I think we need to recognize the work that Chief Paul Wilson has done for the last number of years. It's been extraordinary. In taking that into consideration, I think we also have to give a certain amount of credence to the person that he nominated to replace him on this board. Captain Seiko has been involved indirectly with PSCC for a number of years. He is coordinator for project manager for the PC Wind project in southern Arizona. I think he's eminently qualified, and having Paul Wilson's endorsement, I think we really need to put that in consideration. It puts the co-chairs in different areas of the state, different representations. Mark had spent his time in the fire service, and Mike coming from law enforcement. I think it's important to have both sides represented. So my vote is to support Captain Seiko.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, Steve Campbell. I agree with you as far as trying to have a balance on the board and with the police and fire co-chairs. I think we serve well for the committee. I also like to put my support, I guess, for Mr. Jesse Cooper, who already sits on the SIEC and have an opportunity to see the successes that the committee's had, and then basically would put my foot forward and say I would need to recommend Mr. Cooper for his continued efforts through the successes, and to have him in a co-chair position would allow the committee to continue on the role, or continue on their successes.
Thank you. Other comments? Please, David.
Chairman, I'd like to join with my colleague, Chief Quinn. I think Pima County has contributed a great deal to the committee to date. I think it would be wise to bring in a new perspective as a co-chair. I believe as well that Captain Seiko is eminently qualified for the position, and you have my vote.
Are we voting now?
So on the way up here, I said, Justin, don't put me in the hot seat. I said, help me walk through. How are we going to kind of walk through this? So, so this is. I don't know that this is necessarily so. Technically, in order to appoint a co-chair, we have to come to a majority perspective, and so we have to have a nomination. Prior to that, I think we can go through a voting process. I think that's a good way. Before we do that, I want to make sure that everybody's had an opportunity to kind of talk through and, voice any questions or other recommendations as well. So, Gil?
Yes, Skill or not. Yeah, I also echo the comment with regard to having some representation from different areas of the state. Every one of these candidates is eminently qualified. There's no doubt, and I would agree with Chief Quinn as well as my colleague here, Mr. Azuelo. And I think that Lieutenant Sacco would provide that for us. It would provide the geographic balance. Everybody, as far as I'm concerned, could serve and serve well and honorably and really help us. But I think we should listen to Captain Wilson and what his recommendation was, and that's kind of how I feel. I would like to see that continue, and I would support the lieutenant in this particular case. Just my sense of what I think might be the best thing.
Thank you, Gil. Other comments?
Just since we're all talking about who we would support, I would be supporting Jesse Cooper.
Okay. How about comments from the phone?
We can hardly hear what's being said.
So, apologize for that.
we're trying to get some additional microphones for the phone.
Can you guys hear me?
That's much better.
Okay, I'll try to continue to
We
Talk
can't
loud.
hardly hear anybody. I haven't heard anything until she said you couldn't hear.
Okay. Sorry for that. So we're kind of walking through the different nominations. Pat Quinn spoke up on behalf of Captain Mike Seiko. David Azuelo spoke up as well, and so did Gil. Steve Campbell spoke up in favor of, Jesse. Yep, thank you. And then Jeff, you did as well, Jesse. Yep. So we were kind of talking through what the process is for this. Justin was giving me some kind of history and background to this, and kind of, before we didn't have nominations. We actually kind of had to talk somebody into taking the role, and so we didn't have this situation in the past. But I think that's huge credibility to Paul and the work that's been done from the standpoint of that I think people do find value of this committee. I think people find value in the works that have come from this, and I think people now want to participate and play a strong role in this. So it kind of puts us into a little bit of a predicament from a board perspective. So at that point, is there any comments from the phone? And Patrick, I'm not trying to leave you out as well here. Anyone else have any comments on any of the nominations? Any comments on how to proceed? Kind of sounds like at this point we have two folks that are kind of being talked about. We can head down a path of a vote.
Yeah, this is Mike Worrell. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of Doug Mummer. Doug's a division chief of the Phoenix Fire Department. He's in charge of one of the guys in charge of our technical services division, and is responsible for providing interoperability for 26 fire agencies in the valley, along with providing interoperability with the police department. He's had a lot of experience as far as negotiating between departments and making things happen as far as system integration and making sure dispatch policies and deployment policies are developed that meet all of the requirements of all the people needed, all the departments that are involved. We have a great deal of experience doing that, and I think it'd be a great asset to the SIEC.
Mike, thank you very much for those comments. Any other comments from anyone else on the phone? So Mark's going to make a comment. Mark, if you could come over this way.
I'll try and be. I think it's been said a number of times, any of these folks, I'm sure, will be great on the committee and could do great as chair. My thought, trying to think independently of whether I were in it or outside of it, is since Jesse has been on the committee, that he knows how we've been working, knows where we've been, and I think it would be easier for him to step into a co-chair role to provide that continuity of the committee. And then I would like to think that all these folks that have been nominated for co-chair would be interested in the vacancy then that would be on the committee, and that we could look at that to bring in and start developing some sort of succession planning, because I certainly won't be a co-chair forever, and start building from within the committee. It's a small committee. Still, if we keep that focus of balance, I know the co-chairs are what we're responsible for those other three members, but I think as the committee we share a lot of your thoughts about this diversity and this statewide representation and discipline representation. So just maybe it's a little bit selfish thinking that Jesse would be able to step in quickly in that co-chair role because he understands the continuity of the committee, but that's just an option you could think of.
Thank you very much, Mark. So, I think I'm gonna let's do a roll vote. I think that's probably the easiest way to kind of help us move forward. Is there any other comments from the phone? I don't want to, take this away from anybody making any comments. Justin, can you help us with a roll-based vote?
Certainly. Would you like to? We could go through and have people make their recommendations, see where we come out.
Yep, let's do that. So go down the list, and if you could just let's keep track of this. Put myself on the spot, huh? I'm going to go with Captain Mike Sacco.
Chief Lennon? Chief Lennon, are you still on the phone with us?
Yeah, but I can't hear who the two nominees were.
I'm sorry, the nominees we have are
So,
Doug Mummer,
yep.
Jesse Cooper, Captain Mike Sako, Paul Wright, and Chief Derek Arnson.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I'll wait my vote for a few minutes. Why don't you go to a few others?
Captain Escuela,
Captain Mike Sako, please.
Chief Brown,
Doug Mummer.
Chief Bunce,
Doug Mummer.
Chief Campbell,
Mr. Cooper?
Chief Hancock,
Captain Seiko.
Director Arantia,
Captain Michael Sako.
Chief Quinn,
Captain Sako.
Colonel Rayner,
Jesse Cooper.
Chief Savage, I'm not sure if he was on the call.
He's not.
He's not. And Captain Worrell,
Doug Mummer.
and Chief Lennon.
Doug Mummer.
542.
We have 5 for Mike Sako, 4 for Chief Mummert, and 2 for Jesse Cooper.
Okay. So with that, based on the voting, can I please get a nomination for Captain Mike Sako as the new co-chair for the SIEC?
By Captain David Azuelo, I would make a motion to make Captain Mike Sako the new co-chair for the SIEC.
Second. Before we vote, I just want to thank Paul Wilson again for his service. I think that this situation that we just had to go through speaks volumes. Some big shoes to fill, and we appreciate your service. With that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Captain Mike Sako is the new co-chair of the SIEC. Thank you very much. And Justin, I believe there are no more action items, correct?
That's correct.
Excellent. So, moving on in the agenda, we've got kind of a round of speakers. First up is Robert Rowley, Emergency Manager for Coconino County. Is going to walk us through the Coconino County 2013 Communications Focused Tabletop Exercise.
All right, tucked away over here in the corner. This makes it a lot harder for me to read entirely off of the PowerPoint presentation for the entire afternoon. But I will do my best to bore you anyway. I hope it's not that boring. Yes, good afternoon. My name's Robert Rowley. I'm the Coconino County Emergency Manager. And last February, we had a interoperable communications tabletop exercise that we all felt went very well. All right. So just a little bit of the background information. The Office of Emergency Communications got a grant from the Technical Assistance Program. That all spilled into the Public Safety Interoperable Communications Office approaching us saying they had funding to help us put on a tabletop exercise to exercise our TIC feat. Which I jumped at that opportunity because, we generally all have the technology to speak with each other on the radio. Very rarely do we actually exercise that ability to do it. We have some unique challenges up here in Coconino County. We have the city Flagstaff on UHF, all our surrounding agencies on VHF, NAU, which also is on UHF. And we all help each other out up here, and sometimes it can get a little tricky trying to make sure we're still able to talk to each other. So they assigned a team to help us put on the exercise. It was really good. All we really had to do here at the county level was provide logistical support. They helped us put all the meetings together. They helped us actually craft and put the exercise on and go through the after-action review process. The first conference we had was called the pre-planning conference, and as you see, when we go down the line here, they followed the Homeland Security exercise and evaluation process pretty much to the letter. There are some people who hate HCEP. There's those who like it. I started out hating it and grew to like it because it forces you to put on a very well organized and documented exercise with good documentation at the end in your after-action review and corrective action plan. So you're going to kind of see how the HC process works as we go through the slides. And if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to take it. So the first pre-planning conference was held, and this is when we set up the entire HC planning process to put on the exercise. You can see it goes all the way from, is the laser on here? It is, all right. It goes all the way from your first planning conference all the way to the after-action conference at the end. So what we figured out was we wanted to test our overall readiness of the region in the event of an actual emergency and actually using our TICP. This all flows around the whole NECP goal 2 that 75% of first responder agencies in non-UASI areas are supposed to be able to get their communications, get interoperable communications up and running after a significant event within an hour, 3 hours. I have it here, but 1 or 3 anyway. So we wanted to review our policies, procedures, plans, assets for our communications that will be required by the exercise participants. We wanted to exercise our regional communications plans, in particular our TICP, discuss the ability of participating public safety personnel to rapidly establish interoperable communications in the events of a major multi-agency incident, and determine the capability gaps. Now, that's the biggest one at the end. We're less interested on what we do well, we're more interested on what we can't do well. And that's what we need to focus our exercise and training dollars on and equipment dollars on in the future. We had great participation from the beginning to the end. We'll go down at the very end of this presentation to show all that were involved. But we had basically every major emergency response agency and supporting agencies participating in this process, even from the planning all the way up to actually putting on the exercise. So at the initial planning conference, we did the overview of how a tabletop exercise is supposed to work using the HC process. And we did a discussion at the tabletop. We kind of went over what we thought some of our potential communication gaps would be. We wanted to figure out who was going to be part of this exercise. We needed to make sure all major players were there. We wanted to pick a scenario that would involve everybody. And you'll see our scenario here upcoming. It gets pretty complex. And then who from these agencies need to be participating. And that's probably the toughest part right there, because oftentimes you see the same people showing up to all of these exercises. And a lot of them are the mid to upper level management command folks. And what we really want, especially at an interoperable communications exercise, we want the people participating in the exercise is actually going to be picking up the radio and actually be trying to do the tactical operations out of the field. And that's tough because you're pulling people off the job and into an exercise. So we had to do a little arm twisting, but we really did good participation from them. Only planners, I'm kind of skipping stuff. So that was the initial planning conference. The final planning conference, only the actual planners of the exercise attend. You don't want people who are going to be exercise participants here because they get to see what's going to happen. I kind of want them to be surprised a little bit. So we reviewed our final scenario. We made sure as many of the agencies we felt needed to participate were engaged in the process, finalized any of our unresolved details, verified all of our dates for the actual tabletop exercise and the AAR. And then we wanted to know who needs to receive the tabletop exercise after action report. AARs can often have some somewhat sensitive information in there, especially if the participants are frank and open as to what they saw and found out during the exercise, which you want them to be. So you don't just want to send your AAR out to the world. It needs to just go to the people who need to see it. Finalize which players we wanted to have attend the tabletop exercise, and then went over the logistics. It's amazing how much goes into a well thought out and well planned tabletop exercise. A lot of times these things are just kind of thrown together, and the overall end result usually reflects that. You know, yeah, you got everybody together, yeah, you had your exercise, but does anybody remember it 3 months down the road, and were you able to formulate a plan on how to move forward after that? So here we are, the day of the tabletop exercise. We have a few kind of pictures of it as we go along. We had 69 players, observers, and evaluators participating in this tabletop. It was a big one. It filled up our entire Emergency Operations Center, the main conference room over at the Sheriff's Department. Everybody who was playing or observing got situation manuals. Anybody here ever put together a sit man before? A few? Everybody still awake? All right, a couple. You know what's neat about HC is when you actually enter your exercise into the system, it's an online portal that you get into. It's got all the boilerplate for all of these documents. So all you're really doing is going in and just kind of tweaking it to make it work for your exercise. It does a lot of the work for you. That's what I like about it. What we did is all the participants were positioned in the room. It's hard to see because there's so many people in there, but we kind of created little table islands throughout the room where they were separated by their roles and agencies. And then the observers were all around the edge of the room. And the evaluators were kind of spread throughout the room, listening in, trying to be invisible, but trying to hear what the interaction was going on during the exercise. And then we had a facilitator up front who was running the meeting. And here's some of your typical positions that you have in a good exercise. You have your players, the people you're testing. You have your observers. A lot of people get interested when they hear you're putting on an exercise, so they just want to come in and take a look at it. The evaluators are the ones who are actually watching the exercise and writing down notes and giving all of the feedback at the end to help with the after-action review. And the facilitator keeps the exercise moving along. So here we are getting kicked off in the exercise. The facilitator began, I just forgot her name. Jennifer Harden, yes, Jennifer Harden. She was great, a really good facilitator, kept everybody really engaged. And that's the other thing. A good facilitator, which she was, looks around the room and sees who's not participating and then kind of focuses in on them to make sure that they actually give input. Because everybody we had in that room needed to be there and we needed to hear from them. So, at the initial planning conference, can anybody guess what agency didn't make it to that one? They were at all the rest after that, but we looked around and said, who's not here? All right, let's have this happen on NAU. So what we're going to do is kind of run through the whole scenario we put together, and it'll kind of give you an idea of how we crafted this scenario to try to bring all of the participants in, and so they'd all have a role. That's a difficult thing to do in Coconino County. You know, we're a little on the large side. So to create a incident that was large enough, to bring in the city of Williams and Sedona and a lot of our surrounding agencies, it took some creativity, but I think we did pretty good. So here's our scenario. It starts on the campus of NAU. Students are preparing for their finals, and a series of demonstrations have occurred with a protest group, and it's been all scheduled. We've been able to watch it kind of unfold on Facebook. And then the scenario is set up in phases. And at the end of each phase, we stop and we discussed how this would affect how we respond, how this would affect our communications as each phase goes through. So phase 1, we have 911 callers report there is an explosion in a building in the NAU campus. There's windows blown out, possible laboratory and office spaces damaged. Callers reporting an unknown number of injuries. And that's basically all they got. And then we stopped and said, all right, what are some of our communication challenges based solely on this? And based on phase 1, no real challenges yet, right? We just got the initial information. Phase 2, response. The first responders arrive on scene and report 2 fatalities and approximately 6 injured. Witnesses report at least 9 students unaccounted for. So now we're getting a little more complex. We have essentially an MCI, 6 injured all at once. 2 fatalities would put a pretty big strain on our fire and EMS. And obviously we're going to have a urban search and rescue situation where possibly if we have 9 students, we don't know where they're at. Damaged building. So after each phase, we talk about it, and the facilitator keeps the discussion focused on communications. It's really easy. Those of us who have a first responder background, we really like to get into the weeds and talk about all the other stuff we're going to do. This was specifically an interoperable communications exercise, so when the responses started drifting away from communications, it was her job to bring everybody back in, keep it focused on communications. Really hard to do because we want to try to fix all the other stuff too. Potentially impacted agencies were engaged to ensure their participation. And again, that's where that facilitator looks around and sees who's not participating, whose opinion we've not gotten yet, and makes them talk. Phase 3, incident evaluation. Paramedics initiate on-site triage efforts and law enforcement establishes a perimeter. And officers report shots fired. Seconds later, responders report 2 officers down. Suddenly this whole thing has just ballooned up exponentially larger. It was already big, now it's gotten much, much bigger. So we stop, talk about how that's going to affect our communications. If anybody in law enforcement in this room has ever been in a situation, even around a situation where there's been an officer involved shooting, we all know what happens to radio communications the second that happens. And that is, it's chaos on the radio. So how we address that in our tactical interoperable communications plan when that happens. Phase 4. Main road in and out of NAU is shut down due to vehicle and pedestrian traffic. Traffic is backing up into town. If you're familiar with the campus of NAU, it's just part of the city of Flagstaff, basically. It's a little island in the middle of it, but it's like part of the city, and its ingress and egress out of there is pretty tight. If you tried to get in there when classes start in the morning or at the end when everybody's trying to get home, even in regular good days, it's locked up. And imagine all this emergency traffic swarming in. You have the officer down call. You're going to have law enforcement coming from everywhere to try to help out. It's going to lock it up. How's that going to affect communications? Phase 5, local communications are severely degraded due to the amount of use by students and local citizens. NAU boasts a campus population of in the low 20,000s. Every one of them has a cell phone. Think they're going to be on it, talking to who they want to talk to about it, and texting and Facebooking and all that. We don't have a strong cell tower infrastructure up here. We really rely on cell phones way more than we should, and so we created this scenario so that cell phones are going to be taken out of the picture early on, so you're forced to utilize your picture. Cell service is not working. Phase 6, secondary response and assessment. 911 callers report a vehicle leaving at a high rate of speed. The driver roughly matches the campus shooter. The driver loses control down the I-40 and clips a tour bus full of Japanese tourists, overturning it. The bus blocks eastbound I-40. The driver of the vehicle flees into the terrain from the scene. So now we're really blowing this thing up. But just, I'm against exercises that are needlessly large and complex and setting people up to fail, and that's not what we were doing here. We were just trying to find something that was going to be so resource heavy that we were going to need to bring in as many outside agencies as possible to really talk about how we're going to talk to each other. Phase 7, the county EOC and the NAU EOC are both activated to address additional resources that are needed for all incidents and scenes. And this is where I come in, and a really frustrating thing at the Emergency Operations Center level is trying to get that communication from the field into the EOC. It's always a challenge, even when things are not this bad. Phase 8, both dispatch centers are inundated with media requests. Keeping in mind, when they say both dispatch centers, we're talking about the Flagstaff PD Sheriff's Department Dispatch Center and the NAU Police Dispatch Center, which are both going to be intimately involved in this. Rumor is the Flagstaff and campus police chiefs already on campus for a meeting where the 2 officers critically wounded in the shooting. The explosion and ensuing response were captured on mobile devices and were immediately posted to multiple social media sites. Big public information problem right here. Phase 9, we talked about our mutual aid partners in this. You have a bus with 40 riders, 20 injured, 5 deceased. Who are you going to ask for mutual aid with that MCI? Local hospital is overwhelmed, so that brings up the how we're going to distribute patients. It's already overwhelmed. Where are we going to send those 20 injured? The driver remains at large and the search continues. All the law enforcement resources that are going to be coming in at this point to try to find that person. Highway is backed up. Rescue activities on campus. Additional public safety resources are required. State and federal agencies are engaging in the effort. And boy, bring in your federal law enforcement agencies, particularly out of the area. How do you talk to them? They're in an entirely different world. What's your plan for that? And finally, I think this is finally, Phase 10, intelligence and investigations. Public safety sensitive radio transmissions are being scanned. Incident commanders are looking for secure ways to communicate, keeping in mind that you can't use your cell phones now. We have a fellow up here who runs a website and Facebook page called Flag Scanner. And as the name would have you believe, he just listens to the scanner and then puts this information out. And he has apps that you can download to your smartphones, and you get alerts, and you can find out every little thing that's happening in the city of Flagstaff and surrounding area all throughout the day. And you're using your radios, because you can't use your cell phones, to talk about potentially sensitive matters in the law enforcement investigation, intelligence, and the manhunt out in the field. How are you going to do that if you can't use your cell phone? You don't want the public to know everything that's going on out there. Oh, I was wrong. Phase 11. I've been to a lot of exercises, particularly since I entered the field of emergency management. And I can't think of one single exercise I've been to where we have exercised the actual transfer of command. We all talk about setting it up and being ready to do it, and usually our exercise ends right at the point where we're ready to do it, but we never do. There's a lot of issues with that. It's really hard to let go. You've got everybody who's been involved in it. It's time for you to move on and turn it over to the next operational period. So in our next operational period, we're looking at the situation the next group is going to be dealing with, where evacuations are mostly complete from the crash site. Explosion victims have been transported to local hospitals. 4 students are still unaccounted for. The driver is still outstanding and the search is continuing. Current rescue teams have worked through the night and need relief. Next operational period begins. Now, I believe there was a, just on the issue of still looking for the person out in the woods. In Northern California last year, they had a SWAT team that was out looking for a homicide suspect in the woods up in Northern California, and that hunt lasted for about 4 or 5 days. And imagine the logistics necessary and the planning necessary to pull out your resident local SWAT team and have an outside agency come in and take over that operation, and the communications that would be involved with that, because they might not have all the same channels that you have in your radio. There's all our phases. That, when we finished, everybody's encouraged to stick around and take part in a hot wash. You've all heard of a hot wash. That's just it's like a really quick after-action review. Everybody stops. It takes about an hour, 30 minutes to an hour to talk about everything that what went right, what went wrong, what could have been better about the exercise. We had really good feedback from all our participants. They liked the exercise. They actually thought that more people should have been participating in it. And we already had 69 there total. We were at capacity for that room. They felt that there could have been more agencies there to help. They wanted to do additional tabletops to ensure all agencies are fully engaged, in particular getting more of those line level folks in there participating in it. And they shared what their takeaways were from the exercise and what they were going to specifically try to follow up with at their own agency. We then had a quick look, which was the next day, and that gave our exercise team time to look at the evaluations that were completed that day by the evaluators, the comments that were given at the hot wash, and then kind of give a little more complete overview of how the exercise went at the quick look meeting. And the attendees were encouraged to provide feedback on the overview for the after-action report. A few days later, we got an electronic version of the AAR, just kind of the rough draft, so to speak. And then the whole idea is you look at the AAR, and everybody who shows up to the after-action conference is already familiar with it, and they're ready to provide feedback. Makes the meeting more efficient. After we were all done, some of our successes, we did have good multi-agency, multi-discipline participation in the exercise. That wasn't a surprise to me up here. This is my 1-year anniversary in Coconino County. I came from California. We thought we were pretty good at being cooperative and doing a lot of multi-agency stuff. It's a whole new level up here. It really is great. I never really had any issues. When I was trying to bring everybody together for this exercise, I had all of about 5 months on the job, 4 months on the job, and I didn't have much trouble at all getting people to participate. So I mean that is an example of the kind of group of people we're working with up here. Regional agency reps quickly recognized the benefits of operating in a unified command. That was good that they recognized that because it doesn't happen very often. Command personnel identified the need to co-locate their command structures in part to reduce the need for additional command level radio communications. You've got so many different agencies that all have a major role to play in this type of incident, the incident that we created here. If everybody's kind of located in the same command post on a unified command, then they're not using precious radio space to try to talk to each other. Here's the most important stuff. Here's some of the things we came up with that we could improve upon. Continue to collaborate as a region on implementing unified command. Develop our protocols to address dispatch center roles and responsibilities during significant events. What would NAU primarily be responsible for? What would Flagstaff, Coconino County Dispatch Center be primarily responsible for? What would fire be doing? This was an interesting one. It's designated a single cross-banded radio frequency talk path exclusively for direct communications among PSAPs in the Coconino County region. We identified we didn't really have that, and that it would be something that would have really benefited us in a situation like this. Then program regional radios in accordance with the Arizona Interoperable Channels Plan. Errors came up a lot during the exercise, and how much everyone was going to rely on that as one of the ways they're going to be able to talk to each other. But keeping in mind that's one channel that everybody was relying on. Our final after-action report was, this is it here. It was 89 pages. It was very complete. About 40 of those pages or so were specific items on our gaps and how we can address them. And that was provided to us, and we sent that out to all of our participating agencies to use and move forward with. The trick now is to actually move forward with it. It was a great exercise. We learned a lot. We got a great comprehensive document. It tells us what we need to do. Now the hard part is actually do something with it, because as I was just kind of talking about it back at my seat, you have a project like this, you spend months planning it, you carry it out, you finish it, And then there's that pressure to move on to the next thing because you've already done this. But this is a constant thing. It's a constant issue that we have to deal with. Channels are always changing, names are always changing, systems are always being upgraded. This is something we need to stay on top of. And here is the list of our participating agencies that was all part of this. So that was a really good group to get all of that under one roof to participate in one single exercise. And again, the state really helped us out with that. All I had to do is kind of handle the logistics of herding the cats into the room, and then they put everything on for us and gave us the great document at the end. And yeah, thanks to me. That's my partner, Ruth Ann, right there. She's my assistant. She really, really helped me out. I couldn't have done it without her.
This is my slide. They did a lot of work on this, and we really wanted to say thank you, because if it wasn't for their office, then this wouldn't have been so successful.
Any questions? Bored to tears? Ready to move on?
Excellent.
It's good. Let's do.
I commend you and the group for following through with the tabletop exercises. I mean, obviously that's one of those challenges, you always want to be prepared. But looking at it from the communications aspect, and I know Coconino County had a Goal 2 evaluation through a lot of the areas that talks about communication and double link the channels and having the radios programmed. I'm wondering, and this is more for the my peers here on the commission, is it something we should be doing to drive more of a public policy, the communications policy, and be able to help support? And maybe, and again, I'm not quite in tune with what staff is doing. Obviously, they're here supporting the planning and reporting. But I'm wondering, because I see these similar type of items every presentation we have. It's the issue of different organizations resistant to moving over, or whether it's financial. So I'm looking at just kind of an open question: is how can the commission continue to push forward on pushing public policy and using that at the state level to help, provide them with the resources they need and to be able to have more successes. So, like hats off to you on pulling out the exercises, but I think we need to be looking at some more public policy on pushing policy.
It's the follow-up. So we had great exercise support. It was not that difficult for us to make this happen. The hard part now is, we have all these gaps. How are we going to provide the motivation to meet them, fill them?
So, Steve, I think that's a great point. I think just yesterday we received our letter to do a sunset review of the PSCC office, and so I think this is a really good time to kind of to look inward on what the role of the organization is, what has been accomplished over the last 5-10 years, right? But also what's next, because I know there's been some question of is it, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of potentially what this organization is about. I think there's some assumptions that it's to build the physical infrastructure versus to help coordinate that communication. And I don't know that the value of interoperable communication and facilitating conversation is valued sometimes, or even just understood at all. And so I love your guys' input as to how do we capture that, how do we make that part of the charter and the mandate as we move forward, because I think it is critical. I think there's kind of a crossroads where a lot of this infrastructure has been built out, things have evolved, technology's been invested in. I think sometimes leadership sometimes thinks that we already gave a whole bunch of money. It's like a railroad track and it's not going to change for the next 50 years. Well, that's not what it is. I think there is a lot of nurturing that has to happen in order to continue to move this forward.
And I want to commend the staff, PSCC staff. I mean, they're there. They travel all over the state to help different exercises in counties in the state. I'm just trying to figure out how do we. When you look at the various communication systems throughout the state, and the overall goal is if we have to move some assets from north down to the south, or central Arizona down to the south, or whatever the case may be, I'm wondering if that's one of those areas that we need to start focusing more on, and is creating that public policy, being the kind of the conduit, if you will, between the different communication systems to be able to have that common element, resources they can go to and say, how do we get from where we need to be? Great example here, we know what we have to do when the time of effort comes in. We know we got to get bodies to the hospital. We got to get reports made. But that communication part of things, we're no different in the valley because we don't exercise it as much as we need to, and even down to the point the officers get into the various decks that they need to get to build the channel. So I just think we should be looking at what we can do to help pull all this stuff together statewide.
Yep.
I guess with that, I'm at it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you.
Excellent. Next on the agenda is Jesse Cooper to come up and talk about lessons learned of the 2013 Arizona Communications Unit Training Field Day.
Got all that?
I got it. There's a lot there. There's a whole bunch more, actually, so.
Good afternoon. I'm going to cover the lessons learned from our Communications Unit Training Field Day. We'll hit the background, how did we get here, go over the event, the accomplishments, and probably the most valuable, which is the lessons learned and how do we take this forward. What is our next steps in the state of Arizona where we can implement this plan and train some additional staff. So 2008, OEC started out with the communications unit leader and the communications technician, all hazards classifications. The wildland community has had this for decades. So all hazards came around through the efforts of the PSCC, the SIEC, and the PSCC office. We've implemented a group that is starting to credential these individuals throughout the state of Arizona, recognize them, and come up with policies and procedures on how we're going to operate. So all of our classes are NIMS compliant, and we have plenty of classes throughout the state of Arizona, but one thing that was lacking was the ability for these individuals to get their task books completed. So the PSCC office, through a grant from DHS, we obtained that through the central region and MOU'd it over to the PSCC office so we could create a field day to allow these individuals to get their task books completed. That was the one thing that was lacking, was the ability. We could get them through the training, but we couldn't get task books completed fast enough. So the event was supported through SKIP Initiative number 10 and through the statewide, the SIEC and the NIMS Communications Work Group. We opted to have this communications field day. And the event was the first of its kind within the state. We held it on Wednesday, February 20th. It's a fantastic day. I think it snowed in Phoenix that day. So we picked a fabulous day to be outdoors. The PSCC office did a competitive procurement process to select a vendor to help out with this. We partnered with SAIC, was awarded that. Mike Paulette was fantastic. He was our facilitator that helped the planning teams get this together. And the PSCC office partnered with the Arizona National Guard and the 91st Civil Support Team. They were instrumental. We were able to use the Papago facility. We were able to use a lot of their resources and a lot of their people to help us out with this training. I don't think it would have been possible if they hadn't supported us through that. We originally targeted this in the spring or fall of 2012, but we had procurement issues. I think Susan was also looking at like a July field day, and we said in Phoenix that's not going to work for us. So we pushed it out until we could get it into the cooler months. January 2012, a survey was conducted. The PSCC office did a fantastic job of sending out information. We're trying to figure out what tasks needed to be completed, how many individuals did we have to get this done. February through September, the procurement process was completed, and SAIC was chosen to do that. The event planning team, we'll get into a little more of who those individuals were, but we did the planning process and got everything ready for our February timeline. So our goals, we want to enhance skills and abilities. We had the training completed, we had the individuals identified. What was lacking was enough events for these folks to get their task books completed. That was really our primary objective. We wanted to get people together, build relationships, allow people to get task books completed, and really provide opportunity that some people may not get to see. Some people don't get to do event planning very often, and you only have 3 years from the time of your class to get your task book completed. So the structure of the field day, we put out a call to event planning members to figure out how much stuff they could bring, what could they bring with them, and what were they willing to support for us. So trainees were separated into various groups, and we had 4 teams that were all set up. We rotated them through various stations so they could get experience with all of the different equipment that we had available. We'll break that down a little bit. But probably one of the greatest things that we had was the ability to network and meet other people from around the state. We brought people from all over the state to work together. It wasn't just a Maricopa County event. But interoperable communications is as much technology as it is relationships. And it's who you know, who you can call, and what resources you can get a hold of. So that was valuable for everybody to get together and figure out who in the state can do what and who has the equipment. So it was a single day event for the staff. We set up all the mobile communications equipment. February 20th was our field day, and then the following day, all of the event planners and participants met up at the PSCC office, and we just completed task sign-offs. That was our goal and our objective, was to get as many tasks completed as possible. We knew we weren't going to complete a credential through this task book day, but we wanted to give people the opportunity. If they don't get a chance to program radios or set up portable repeaters, that was the purpose of this, was to give them the opportunity to do that. The Papago Military Reservation supported our activities. They set us up with the Joint Information Center, the log cabin, which is this, I think it's the old 211 center. If you've ever been there, the softball fields, we set up all of our equipment out there, and then we had the civil support team let us use their conference room so we could do programming stations and let people have hands-on experience. Our event planning team became tech managers and hosted tech stations. They were also the individuals signing off task books as we went through the process. This is just a map of our area, of our different stations we had set up. Again, we had 4 teams and 4 stations, so we rotated them throughout the day. They just moved from station to station. This is just an overview of our schedule. We had 3 mobile communications units that were used to support this. ADEM brought out the Bullfrog, the 91st CST brought out their command suite, and then the Phoenix UASI brought out their communications suburban. All of our event planning members were fantastic with bringing out caches of radios, portable repeaters, phone equipment, gateways. If we had it in the area or the state, we tried to bring it all out. We wanted as much equipment there as possible for everybody to get a look at. Michael Paulette, he was our director, and Matt Nielsen was another communications specialist who helped us out. Our event planning team was communications specialists and experts from around the state of Arizona. And you can see various pictures of our planning team there. I think Justin is spinning the radio there.
I see him doing that all the time.
So our event planning team, we wanted to get as many of the already credentialed all hazards, ComLs, and ComTechs who've already been recognized. That's preferable to have somebody who's already been through the process be your task book sign-off. We did have some individuals who hadn't completed that, but we had a really good team. We tasked them with a lot of work. They had to develop scenarios, they had to support our logistics, they had to staff the field day, and everybody did this for free, which was amazing. Susan brought us food, PSCC office supported us, we worked them pretty hard. This is our planning team members. You can see we had representation from all over the state. We had police, fire, EMS, state forestry, emergency management. We had a really good mix of individuals who helped us plan this. Our trainees, again, they sent out a notice to try and find out who was interested in doing that. And when they showed up, we wanted them to be prepared to work. So they had to come up with all of their equipment. We checked off equipment. We put them to work right off the bat. They didn't get any orientation. It was show us all your equipment and let us get to work with it. We designated a team leader. They were responsible for moving the teams through the stations, and each team had 6 to 8 members. We tried to split them up, half ComLs and half ComTechs. Throughout this field day, we made the participants select which path they wanted to go down. They couldn't do one or they couldn't do both. They had to pick which one they were going to go towards. So we had 27 trainees from the field day, 19 agencies, and 5 counties, which was pretty good for something held in Maricopa County. We had some VIP observers that showed up. Lisa Meyerson, at the time statewide coordinator, coordinated the observers for us, and we were able to have them tour the various activities and participate in a discussion following that to look at the value of what we were putting together and really determine the long-term scope of what we were putting together for this. Chief Campbell attended, Miss Lisa Hansen from Department of Homeland Security, Mr. Manfredi, George Molnar. We had the Nevada SWIC come down there to see how we were doing this so they could take the best practices and lessons learned back to their state. General Salinas, Director of the Joint of Staff there, and Paul Wilson was down or up from Pima County to see how we were doing things. So our accomplishments, based on the feedback, it was very positive. We received some great feedback from all of the participants. The event was successful because of the event planning team we had. Again, all of this equipment, a lot of it Homeland Security purchased. All of the time was donated. All of the agencies were allowed their personnel to show up. Event planners were there for 3 days for the most part, so it was not a short week for them. We had a 1 to 1.5 ratio, which was pretty good. We almost had a 1-on-1 ratio of participants and event planners, so that was critical to our success. We didn't have one person trying to observe 7 or 8 different people and then have to go back and sign off task force. The field day was well documented, and I'm going to thank Susan for that. She's back there, but there's a copy of the documentation, and a lot of times field days go off, and then somebody doesn't keep notes of it, and then a couple years later you're trying to do a field day and figure out what you did, and you don't have any solid documentation. Thanks to the PSCC office and the efforts of Susan and everybody else, we have a very comprehensive document that details exactly how we did this, what resources did we have, and we're able to reproduce that in the future. The registration process, we attracted the right individuals. I think that was in large part to the PSCC office putting out the survey ahead of time to try and market this to the right group. Tech station activities were good. We allowed people a hands-on approach. They were able to have contact with equipment that they normally wouldn't see. And the information was great as far as networking. Again, everybody left with everyone else's phone numbers and capabilities. And to me, that's one of the greatest values. Task books, that was good. That's what we wanted to do. But that networking and relationships was critical to our success. So, a couple lessons learned on that. ComL and ComTech. We got a little bit, some people wanted it either one or the other. It was a little difficult having people mixed together. A little more scenario-based activities. This was a lot of just hands-on technical work. The stations were very, not real scenario-based, just go do, and then we'll sign you off. And I think our participants were asking for a lot more scenario-based, similar to what they did on their on that exercise that we just heard about. More scenarios. How do you respond to those scenarios, and how do you equip them for communications? Detailed equipment list from each tech station. A lot of it was last minute. We threw in a lot of equipment. Things we didn't expect showed up, which was great for us. Bad for tech station managers at the end of the day trying to figure out where all this equipment ended up. Multiple radio programming stations. That one I think ended up being more popular than we thought it was going to be, and we ran out of computers, ran out of radios, and ran out of people to take a look at that. So we did learn some valuable lessons on that. Future applications. We need to take a look at the venue size was good. Bad weather day, but everybody managed. Good exercise communications days are not always sunny and nice, so that was good for us. And it would not have been possible without the planning team. Everybody was fantastic. You can see our pictures down there of everybody participating, and a lot of these people traveled great distances to participate with us. So it was a major undertaking, a significant effort. I'm going to thank the PSCC office. They're thanking everybody else in here except themselves. You guys did a fantastic job. We wouldn't have been able to do that. I had initially applied for the grant. I knew I couldn't do it, so I got with the PSCC office and asked them if they'd be willing for me to MOU that money and have them do that. So we had our VIP observers, ADEM, the civil support team, the military reservation for letting us invade their space for a couple of days, all of the trainees. It was just an amazing day. Our next steps on this, we want to take what we've accomplished, and we want to be able to reproduce this in the future with similar events. The funding on this, a lot of funding was put in for the planning and the documentation preparation, but at this point we have a blueprint. We have a template on how we need to do this. We know how to organize this thanks to the efforts of SAIC and the PSCC office, and the documentation that you have shows you exactly how to do this. It's a lot of effort. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. Susan and the PSCC office aren't going to tell you that it wasn't, but we hope to have more of these in the future. As we get these ComTech and ComL classes through, we need a venue for people to be able to get their task books signed off. This was a great opportunity to get a lot of those tasks that you may not get to do on an incident every single day, and then you can supplement that with your actual incidents. With that, any other questions or anything I can answer about our field day?
Any questions? Okay.
I've got one. Jesse, were you primarily focusing on volunteers, or are these full-time employees that the ComLs?
We actually opened it up to both. So we did have, I think we had some RACES individuals and a couple others. So we did have some volunteers who came on their own time to do that. It was open to anybody in the communications discipline. So police, fire, EMS, or our non-governmental organization support partners. I think we had the hospital. David McCarthy was involved in that, and in the future we had the American Red Cross and Civil Air Patrol had also expressed some interest in participating with us. So it wasn't just your standard public safety, but it was those other partners that we work with.
There was a application process that participants needed to go through. They had to have the support of their agency. They had to have certain prerequisites, primarily attending the Connell class and all of those other requirements. We had it open wide, and we were fortunate we had the right amount of applicants and the right quality of applicants. We would not have been able probably to have any more than the 27 that we had there, just because of the amount of logistics that was required. It was great being able to have the 1.5 to 1 ratio and kind of hands-on instruction, because there were some of the activities that did need a little more in-depth detail discussion, particularly like the setting up the portable gateways for people that don't even use that type of equipment in their systems.
I think similar to what Chief Campbell had mentioned was we were also able to expose people from outside of the metro area to some of our equipment that might actually support some of their incidents. Our RRT or IST may end up taking some of this equipment to their area to support them, and it's not something they have readily available for them to use every single day. So we were hoping to expose them to some of that equipment, and conversely up in the metro area we got exposed to some of the equipment that we don't get to see all the time. So that was another valuable experience for everybody.
It seems like every time we do one of these, people show up with all kinds of equipment, and we realize we don't have enough computers to take care of all the programming on the radios. Yeah, that comes up every single time.
And we found a lot of equipment that we didn't know we had. People have stuff all over the place, and that's the value of those TIC-Ps and documentation of where is all of this stuff, because as we found out over the past 2 weeks, we needed a lot of equipment. We were making a lot of phone calls, and we were digging equipment out of people's closets that we didn't know they had it until we actually got a chance to see it.
And I do want to make a quick update. This was originally scheduled to be presented at the April PSCC meeting. Since then, Homeland Security has gone through their first round of reviews and RAC recommendations on the grants. In each of the grants, we put forward in each of the RACs, we put forward a grant to support the communications unit training program that would offer another round of hopefully up to 5 COML courses, another COMT course, and another field day such as this one. The Central RAC had some fallout money from 2011 SHISHCAP funds, and they have since awarded $25,000 to our office to begin the planning effort. So we're actually already starting our planning efforts for next year's field day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jesse. So with that, Justin is going to give us an update on the statewide policies, standards, and procedures review process.
My presentation today is going to be over our annual review process of our policy, standards, and procedures. And this actually applies both to PSCC and SIEC level procedures. One of our SCIP initiatives, SCIP Initiative 4, calls for us to develop a statewide framework of policy, standards, and procedures related to interoperable communications. And this is something we've been working on for a number of years. We currently have 9 different PSPs across 3 different categories. We've established a standardized template and style guide and established some approval and versioning processes for these. And now all have all of our PSP posted online on our website. With that, we're starting to get into, and I'm going to go through a little bit, but these are the 9 different PSP documents that we have in the governance, technical, and training areas. With that, all of these have kind of started to stabilize. We've gone through a number of different revisions for each of them and feel that they're really getting close. The standard process that we go through for approving a policy, standard, procedure is we start off with the initiation process, and it usually comes through either this body, the SIEC, sometimes it's stakeholder requests, sometimes it's through national dictates that things be created. We typically start off within the PSCC office, developing an internal draft, kind of a straw man document. We reach out to some subject matter experts to get their feedback and thoughts on how the document should be organized and what content should be in there. We'll then bring it forward to one of our work groups, the NIMC work group, technical or operational work group. Then typically we'll go through a public comment period where we issue it out to our interested parties email list and on our website, and have kind of requests for input and review of the documents. And then the document is brought forward through a public meeting for draft review. Comments are accepted, changes are made. Sometimes we'll go through 1 or 2 public comment periods and draft meetings, and we bring it back for a final review and approval in a public meeting. This is really how all of our documents get processed, either PSPs or even our strategic plans and outreach plan. Since these documents have started to be stabilized, we needed to come up with a way to ensure that we don't let policies and procedures get stale just because there's nothing driving us to look at it. So we want to make sure that we do review every policy or procedure annually, and that we give an opportunity for the work groups to review them and for the public to provide comment on the policies and procedures in case there are updates that need to be had. A couple of our documents haven't been updated since 2010, although we have been looking at them and reviewing them. So the process that we would normally go through is to have the work groups and the public in the internal review process, and each quarter of the year we'll have a different set of PSPs that we're going to look at. The results of that review will then be presented either to the PSCC or SIEC as appropriate, whoever the final approval authority is over that document. And if revisions are needed, then we'll continue, make additional drafts, go through more public comment periods and drafts just like we normally would. But if revisions aren't needed, we'll simply update the last review date on the document and then keep it posted out there on the web. The original effective date of the document would remain the same. And in your package, you actually have the template kind of style guide that we've created. Normally, the effective date is the one everybody looks at. They want to know, like, for example, the interoperable channels plan. When was that last updated? That's the date when it gets voted on by the PSCC. Down in the footer of the template, we've added a last review date because we want to make sure people know that if the document they're looking at is more than a year old, they need to know if they have the most up-to-date document or not. But we also want to communicate that if we haven't made any changes to the interoperable channels plan, there's no need to go back out and reprogram your radio and all that sort of thing just because we've reviewed a document. During the review process, each document is reviewed for content updates, conformance with the SCIP, with national standards, other PSPs that may have been updated, plus guidance that we get from stakeholder agencies, Homeland Security, DPS, ADEM, etc. We also look for any technical corrections, broken links, that type of thing. So the quarterly review process, the January through April timeframe is typically when we are in our annual SCIP review process, and so that's when we're also going to be looking at our governance documents to give everybody an opportunity to provide an update on those. In the April to June time period, once the SCIP is approved, we start to then look at the PSCC office plan and the statewide outreach plan. That also corresponds with the NIMC work group's annual meeting, and so that's when we're going to look at the communications unit training related policies and procedures. Then the July through September timeframe is when we look at the group of kind of technical PSPs, the channels plan, minimum equipment standards, AIRS, SOP, that type of thing. Obviously, the AIRS MOU is actually a DPS document that doesn't get changed by this body. That is a DPS document, but that is something that, you know, if if there are changes that had to be made for some reason, I think the only change that's ever been made, to my knowledge, is an addition of an additional clause at the end of it for Sudan. But that was kind of a statutory change that was forced on it. Then October, December is the time period when we would kind of typically look at any new PSPs that need to be created. That's also when our office is busy in our annual reporting season. We have reports to the federal government, to the governor, to the legislature, to the Secretary of State. So we have a lot of different reports that go on during that time of year. And so that time is set aside for any new PSPs that we might need. This year, most of our PSPs, as I said, are stable and really don't need any additional changes. However, because we have been rolling out a new format, there are some that will need some additional content, which will require an additional vote. For example, background, scope, definitions, references section. Some of our older policies don't have those sections in them yet. But for the most part, it's going to be just that type of content. I'm thinking in particular about the interoperable channels plan. We're not looking at making changes to the channels, the channel names, the frequencies, anything like that. But we do want to bring that document up to the newest, or the newer template. I'm not going to go through each of the different PSPs we have there, so before I go on though, I wanted to open it up to see if there were any questions, thoughts, ideas on this PSP review process, any concerns you might have, or any other input you might want to provide. Pat says no, David says no, so I click forward.
That's good, thanks.
Again, I'm not going to go through all the different documents we have. I am going to touch up on the ones that we're going to be going, because it's July, so that means technical PSP review time. We're going to be, in the next week or so, issuing out a call to the public for reviewing all of the different technical PSPs that we have, ask people to take a look at them, see if there are any corrections or changes that need to be made to those documents. Within the technical category, we have the land mobile radio minimum equipment standards. Those were just updated last September, so I don't expect that we're going to need to update them. Those also are already in the new format, so there probably won't be any changes that need to be made to that document. I should mention the presentation on the website. These are all hyperlinked, so if you want to be able to quickly go to each one, it's there. The AIRS SOP was last updated January of 2012. This document is in the old format. Fortunately, most of the sections really are already there, so it's really going to be just a matter of converting it to the new format. The SOP is the document that really lays out how the AIR system should be used, establishes priorities for guidance, that type of thing. The AIRS Improvement and Sustainability Plan is in the new format. We just approved that last October. Right now, we have not had any agencies really go through the existing improvement plan. This is a document that helps to say how the AIR system can be expanded if local jurisdictions want to use their own resources to expand that system. We have currently 3 different agencies that are looking at making changes related to AIRs. So as these agencies go through, we may find things that need to be updated. Then lastly, the interoperable channels plan. This was last approved January 11th of 2012. Along with the channels plan is the priority programming guide. This document is in an old format, so we'll likely see a new version for approval, although, as I mentioned a couple of times, we don't expect to be actually changing any of the core content of those unless there's some reason that comes up to indicate that. So from here, I'm sorry?
With the programming guide, are we going to resubmit the stickers that go on the radios across the state? We put those up like 4 years ago, and I don't know if they've been updated since then.
Yeah, they actually have not been updated since then. In fact, they still say AIRS AZ on them, even though that's no longer there. So we're going to look at what we can do to update those stickers. I just happen to have about 1,000 of them left in my office, so I have a boss that doesn't like me spending money unnecessarily. but and that is
They're good stickers. I realize they're out of date, but I mean, that current ones would be a great tool.
Absolutely. And along with this, we're in the process of developing a statewide TICP, and so that's one of the things we're looking at is once we have the statewide TICP completed, what other additional assets, kind of checklists, reference cards like that can we produce. So again, these are the 4 different technical documents that we're going to be reviewing over the next 3 months. We would appreciate any feedback that anyone has on those documents. Once we get them converted to the new format, those ones will probably require some additional content, which would require an additional vote by either this body or the SIEC. Although even then, we don't expect the core content of it to actually change. Approval drafts will be reviewed and distributed as needed. The minimum equipment standards and the Arizona Interoperable Channels Plan are both documents that this body approves. The AIRS SOP and Improvement and Sustainability Plan are SIEC documents. With that, this is probably the fastest I've ever presented to the Commission. Are there any questions?
Excellent. Thank you, Justin. With that, Michael Britt is going to give us an update on the National Public Safety Broadband Network.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thanks for your time. So for the National Public Safety Broadband Network, we've reviewed this in the past. It's a nationwide network, standards-based technology, $7 billion to build it out. One of the key factors that they built into the legislation is self-sustaining, fee-based network with the ability for public-private partnerships and sharing of state and local infrastructure to lower costs, because they kind of recognize that $7 billion will not be enough to build it out. So there's going to be some leveraged infrastructure and participation that is yet to be defined. Will be built and operated by FirstNet, an independent authority, so they're kind of federal but kind of not. And fundamentally, public safety wants, and FirstNet has started to recognize that the network needs to be cheaper than current air cards, more reliable than current air cards, with as good or better coverage and availability when needed. In other words, priority access over choked cell tower networks that are familiar to people that use for other providers. One key component is the state and local implementation grant program. This is key factors for the grant program are education and outreach and data collection and requirements gathering. Arizona's portion of that, $135 million nationally, is about $3 million. The grant guidance was released February 6th, and we submitted it on March 19th. We've gone through a number of cycles of clarification with NTIA, who's managing the grant. And we just heard recently that we passed the review process, and the grant has been passed over to NIST, who's going to be managing the actual implementation and award. So we're awaiting the award for that. Some key events. We last presented to the PSCC in March, so since that time there have been some key activities. With the FirstNet board meeting on April 23rd, they introduced the new general manager, Bill D'Agostino, and that was a watershed event because they could actually get moving and act as a board rather than act as general managers and technical and outreach managers and so forth. So they're really getting some staff on and moving forward. They reported that they were going to submit or release 17 RFIs. There were some issues internally within the FirstNet board about transparency and communication and public safety representation. I'm trying to be politically correct, but Paul Fitzgerald kind of threw a hand grenade in and presented a motion, and it was tabled, but a review committee was established, so they're actually looking at how they're operating. And a lot of this was as a result of the board trying to be both board members and active general managers or outreach managers, and so they were moving as fast as they possibly could without a lot of communication. I think they learned a lesson there. And they introduced their logo, which is, the first thing everybody has to do, right? All right, we attended a regional meeting in California, along with the other states listed. Basically, the purpose of the meeting was to start their education and outreach and to work with the states, communicate and find out what the states need. They've coined the phrase of these are listening tours. And so presentations by FirstNet board members on what their vision is, what they've heard already from public safety and from those involved. The meetings were organized into breakout sessions by state, and then they went breakout sessions by individual discipline, again, gathering any and all information they could. Our attendees were listed here. I think one comment after the first day from Kevin Rogers was, hey, they might actually pull this off. And then the following day, they proceeded to get a little dysfunctional and then kind of set everybody off again. But again, they are trying to move forward with this, and they are listening to people. So that's all we can ask, I think. Another event was the PSCR Public Safety Communications Research out of Boulder. They have an annual event. I think the first one was about 98 people. The next one was about 200. This was about 500. And I was joking with Jeff Brachter, who puts these together, that he's going to have to get Mile High Stadium the next time around. So, but 500 plus, a good blend of public safety and vendors. The FirstNet Public Safety Advisory Council, PSCC, met for the first time. Arizona has two representatives, Mike Burrell, Phoenix Fire, and then Councilman Scott Summers, who represents National League of Cities out of Mesa. Basically, Homeland Security gave a good overview of their technical assistance that's geared towards broadband, and we are in line to actually take advantage of that. So we'll be seeing more of that as we get traction on the actual grant and the education and outreach process. Arizona Department of Homeland Security held a tribal seminar, which we were invited to present. I want to thank Yoel Orentia, but he had to leave. It was a really fortuitous to be able to join in with that, because 15 of our 22 tribes were represented at that meeting. Okay, and then I wanted to review some of the activities that FirstNet is moving forward with. Call it gaining traction, because they're kind of moving around and not really getting anything going, and with these education and outreach regional meetings, they've really started to move forward. They've given their vision. Their linked events in the slide presentation. You can get out to their presentations. I've stolen a few slides just to give you a sense of where they're going. This is one of my favorites. They recognize the perceptions. For instance, public safety may have to give up the autonomy and control. They were very clear that they recognize the need for local control of this network. So as the event's happening locally, individuals locally can manage the infrastructure. And various and sundry points, that started as rumors or started as observations. I mean, everybody recognizes $7 billion is not enough, but okay, get over it. Let's figure out a way to do it anyway. General Manager D'Agostino has put together an organizational plan. We have technical officers, operations officers, CIOs, CFOs, Chief Administrative, General Counsel. They recognize they are running a major enterprise here. And so this is heartening to see that they've got all the needed roles and responsibilities outlined, and they've been given the authority to go ahead and move forward and hire these people and get them on board. July 10th, they announced the release of 10 of the 17 RFIs. The number of RFIs has actually gone up to 19. During these regional meetings and discussions at various meetings, the people have been thumping FirstNet for the need to recognize and focus on rural. So some of these RFIs, as part of the regional access network, the actual towers and so forth, they've specialized. Some of these are, really the bottom 4, 2 through 5, are focused on what rural areas need. So it's heartening to see this now for, states like Arizona. The antenna systems for the current commercial, everybody's focused on urban, high density. The technology is MIMO, the cell edges, you get this maximum volume. For states like Arizona, we're more interested in antennas that can go a lot further than 2.5, 3 miles. Okay, so that's what these RFIs are about. Microwave backhaul, deployables, satellite, so forth. The core is, to me, that's for the vendors to worry about. All right, and then these are pending RFIs, so they haven't released them yet. They wanted to get the kind of technical infrastructure stuff out, and then this is going to be the admin, billing, and so on and so forth. Some other actions that FirstNet has taken. Do the executive order of everybody on the federal side should play nice together. They've taken the opportunity to start working with the FCC and to see if they can get a streamlined EPA and approval and leverage the permitting and so forth to get existing sites to be able to be approved for FirstNet usage quickly, okay, without a lot of red tape. And we can always hope. All right, and FirstNet is put together a very aggressive plan, and the only concern that we've noted is that there's a disconnect between the FirstNet timing and the SLIC-D grant process timing. In other words, they would have the design decided and starting to build before we actually have the stakeholder education and outreach and getting feedback from our stakeholders. We went to the first of 6 regional meetings. By the 6th regional meeting, they actually proactively mentioned the disconnect between NTIA grant process and their timing. And they're working on getting those put together and getting them rationalized. Next step, we expect the grant somewhere between today and mid-August. We'll develop the content for the education and outreach, and then come up with our detailed project and expenditure plans, and then start doing the education and outreach. Any questions?
Comments, Mr. Chairman?
Pleasure.
First of all, this is Steve Campbell. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in that regional meeting, and I have to honestly say I went in there real skeptical about a nationwide LTE plan and how they're able to pull this off for public safety. And like any good marketing, they hired a fire chief to come in and market the thing, and it sold me, you know. But no, seriously, they did a great job in talking about looking at the needs for public safety on a local basis. One of the concerns that was obviously flared up really quickly was the issue that the LTE FirstNet is designed to have both data and voice, and obviously the technology is way down the road before that gets going, and the fact of people buying and spending money on new communication systems, and now if this comes in over the next several years, what does that mean to our communication system as far as radio communication? I don't think you have to worry about that. It's going to be, they're focusing right now primarily on the data portion. And when we broke out into a public safety workshop, I guess, if you want to say, they asked a definition of what's the first responder, because it's designed to work with first responders. And there were folks there from Alaska, Marinara Islands, which I've never even heard of, and the fact that the Coast Guard could be a first responder. And obviously, I said, I'm from Arizona, we don't have to worry about Coast Guard. But the fact was that the differences on who's going to be on the system is going to be, it's good to see that there's going to be local control as far as who's going to be allowed to go on there. Again, I was a little skeptical about being able to pull something off like this magnitude with the $7 billion budgets, and obviously concerned, because I'm a small agency, and be able to cost that's going to be associated with us converting over to the FirstNet, and when it does come around. But I think, as Dr. Britt was talking about, is the local control is going to be there. Obviously, he had highlighted the areas of it's got to be cost effective. It's got to be producing and be able to have a better product than what we're getting right now. So I'm encouraged, cautiously optimistic. Let's put it that way. That this thing will. I'll be sitting under a pine tree contemplating the next phase of life by the time. But anyway, I think it's got some good possibilities if it gets down the road. Thank you.
Like a number of years ago, the SEC put out a bid process, and Mesa was awarded the initial core for the Southwest region that included Arizona. Does this continue as part of that, or is FirstNet going to re-look at the restructuring where the course of the LEC communications are going to go?
To my way of thinking right now, they have not finalized their core backhaul plans. Okay. Now, what Mesa got was a waiver to actually establish a localized 4G LTE network, not supporting any other jurisdictions, either just playing within their footprint.
Great.
And since
but with the understanding that core was going to be large enough to handle a huge area.
One would think that they would leverage that,
yeah.
But that never happened.
Is the FCC still honoring those, or have they rolled this over to FirstNet?
There was a serious delay, and Mesa opted to cancel their waiver. Okay. Just in terms of the timing of things were getting. Decisions were, they put the BTOP recipients, those that got money to actually build those waiver areas, on hold for a year while the FirstNet legislation was going through and while the board was being established. So many jurisdictions said, we can't wait, and Mesa was one of them. They have allowed some of the BTOP recipients to move forward. They just signed some licensing agreements with LA RICS, and I think Bay RICS is coming up here shortly. So those are going to be the pilot areas of the net.
Too, right?
And Texas has one that's operating. Although they weren't BTOP, they had their own money.
Just take that a step further. There was a second and third wave of applicants that were accepted and not decided on by the FCC. What's the status of those? Are those on a shelf, or is that part of the FirstNet also?
More than likely, those will be on the shelf. Although, again, from an Arizona standpoint, we're trying to be at the forefront to make sure that we're in line to get whatever put together we can.
Thanks for connecting the dots for me.
Okay.
From an Arizona standpoint, how many of the applications came from Arizona?
I know of Yuma
and Tucson, but those were never acted on. Those were put on the shelf.
Nothing from the north end?
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. Yes.
I'd like just to add to that, there are a lot of different organizations, like AFCO, there's NIPSIC, et cetera, that are all, they have formed different groups, committees, task forces, et cetera, that are starting to develop some standards that they want to have applied to the broadband infrastructure.
Yep. Right.
Operating requirements for voice. A lot of that has gone down the road already. I guess the thing that I would encourage folks to do is take a look at the different types of organizations you're involved with, ACO, IASC, et cetera, and look at what some of them may be doing or looking to bring into it. Because some of that will impact the way agencies operate now. I know that I've had a particular eye toward fire operations, and it has a lot of comments into the standards, the requirements that they have been looking at that may not meet some operational requirements regionally. But anyway, just there's a lot of that going on.
That's a good point. And
FirstNet stuff also.
And I tell you what, I'll work with you because I've been involved with NIPSIC. I've been involved more recently with NGA and NAFIO. And rumor has it APCO is going to let me on the broadband committee. Okay, but I've not dealt with the fire aspect. So maybe we can put together a little one sheet that says, okay, these are the various agencies that are getting their policies put together and or standards, because NIPSIC has been working on standards that FirstNet is actually listening to.
So Michael, the first part is this planning part, right? And so first step to that is education and outreach, correct? And then the second part is based on what FirstNet and NTIA's requirements are, we have to gather data, and pass that information back to them so that it gets incorporated to the RFP, into their design, into the network and everything, correct?
And then also along with that, they need to let us know what their business model, what kind of public-private partnerships are appropriate.
Yep.
And then we need to respond to that.
Absolutely. So you got your planning, you got your procurement, you got your execution and implementation, right? And then you've got your adoption, right?
I'm so far from execution.
No, absolutely. But yeah, so far from it. But I mean, from a high level perspective. But I think there's an underlying tone of education, outreach, that continues through that entire process, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so
we got to worry about training after that.
Absolutely. But I think adoption, training and adoption, become a critical factor as you go through that. So I think any comments or any feedback you guys have from an education and outreach perspective, right? I think that's going to be such a critical point right now, because I think that if they can get their time frames lined up between FirstNet and between the grants, I think things probably will go very quickly. I mean, that's everything that we've heard up to this point is FirstNet has a legislative mandate, a congressional mandate to implement this. They've got the budget to do it. They're not going to slow down. They're looking for this input. They're looking for this data as fast as possible. So getting this out is widely as possible is absolutely critical in a very short time frame.
Absolutely.
David?
Chairman, David as well. Dr. Britt, how do you anticipate from a high level, being new to this committee, how do you anticipate the integration with the existing radio systems that we have built throughout the state?
Well, I mean, that's one aspect that very few people have started to look at yet. I mean, it's a concern to me is, okay, how do you back integrate? I mean, with current CAD systems and so forth. I mean, the technological capability, again, it will be at the data layer and with IP back into the CAD, and in some respects it'll be no more different than a current air card, okay? But then other aspects of it, if you're going nationally to get to CGIS or inlets or whatever, what impacts are those going to have?
It's a whole different technology.
It is.
And is it integrated with next generation 911?
Again, the conversations have just begun.
Yeah.
I will stand by to stand by.
But that's critical to have those conversations and to talk about that and to bring those things up. So those are good conversations. We're bringing the 911 office into this conversation. We're currently in the process right now of trying to identify a shared services-based approach to rolling out and refreshing that entire network and all those systems, and to put that on a more of an OpEx type perspective, because recognizing that the current model of CapEx every 7 to 9 year refresh is killing that set of infrastructure. And so it's important to talk about this. It's important to talk about, how do you enable data sharing on a platform like this? It was really opening to have, I don't remember the gentleman's name from Texas that came at one of our
Mike Barney.
Yeah, Mike Barney. That was good for me to hear from the standpoint of the way Texas is looking at it right now. They're not looking at this as a replacement to their land mobile radio. They're looking at this to augment, when it works, if it works, how can they get access to data, how can they pipe video, how can they leverage this, in a non-mission critical voice perspective. And so I think that, even from the presentation earlier from Robert, hearing the reliance on cell communications already today, how does this start to augment that service and what are those capabilities? But I think right now critical is getting this message out, helping people understand that slide there. I encourage everybody to go and grab that slide and to share that slide earlier in your presentation where it shows, kind of the perception versus reality. I know Michael kind of breezed through it, but please go back and look at that. The slide prior to that as well kind of showed the scope of what FirstNet is trying to accomplish, and I think that's going to be really important to understand. What is that scope? What is that perception versus reality? And for us to continue to ask questions, because I think they're still really broad in general.
If I could follow up with one additional. One thing that was left out of that original presentation was the wireless priority service. I know during the Boston bombing, we used that effectively to communicate between Boston and Tucson from an intelligence perspective. Is that also being contemplated here, or will that be replaced?
Well, and conversations, again, this is almost like, well, what do we need to worry about?
Right.
Because if you look at it, FirstNet being a massive IP network is really almost like inlet being a pipeline.
Yep.
So what do you do when you actually replace that, or do you actually use inlet infrastructure currently? Because they've got some seriously good infrastructure already in place. So
and that's where the cost would be lower.
Right.
Per slave. But we got, as a committee, as a commission, we need to be really careful because we can always talk about the bleeding edge of technology. But the reality is the public out there is paying for interoperable systems that may have been outdated, but they're new to us and just being implemented, especially down in Pima County, middle of a $120 million project that's getting ready to come up on board.
Right.
That other folks have had in place since the late 90s. They're not going to be ready to pay for another system for 20 years.
Right.
And if we start talking about the next wave, we're going to undo what we're trying to do right now.
Yep.
Be real careful about talking about wishware and the reality of what we're trying to implement right now.
Question back?
Yes, I've got a vote on this slide. We used to this regarding a grant that today. What is that exactly?
The award.
The education and outreach, the SLIG-P grant, that would cover Public Safety Interoperable Communications Office going out to every jurisdiction statewide, doing education and outreach, all the tribes, all the associations, and so forth, getting feedback from those jurisdictions, validating what is critical infrastructure to them. What is population coverage, footprint, and so forth that they need.
Is that going to have to be accomplished by that end date?
Well, it's a 3-year performance period for the grant. Okay. Which date were you talking about?
You had it like from today up until...
Oh, that was the announcement of the award for the state of Arizona. Once we get the award, then we have 3 years to do the education outreach and the data collection and coverage requirements. Okay. All right.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin?
There are a couple of things I did want to hit. Something that's new for us and that we're going to be doing over the next 3 years, as Michael mentioned, we anticipate getting the $3 million grant award here sometime in the next 30 days. As part of that, the state of Arizona has to put up approximately $790,000 match towards the 2-point-some-odd million from the feds. In order to track our non-federal match, we're asking everyone who is not paid from a federal source. So if you are paid directly from federal grant funds or you're an employee of the federal government, you don't need to fill this out. But if everyone else could fill this out, we need to track the time that everybody is spending during our broadband discussions and things like that. So you'll be seeing more of those in the future. There are a couple of great upcoming events. Graham, Greenlee, and Gila County, the 3G TICP kickoff workshop is coming up July 31st. The Yavapai County TICP kickoff workshop has been rescheduled to August 12th. Those are our last two TICP workshops that we need for this year. Actually, those are the kickoff workshops. We'll also have the development workshops following soon. The SIEC meeting for August is going to be rescheduled. We realize that happens to overlap with APCO and the statewide exercise final planning 3-day planning conference, so we're going to reschedule that, but we wanted until we got a new SIEC co-chair appointed before picking that date. The next PSCC meeting will be in Tucson, September 17th. I'm not going to go through all of the multiple project updates, but one key development that we've had, we've been able to get a lot of technical assistance from the Office of Emergency Communications. In particular, they have been drafting and developing standard operating procedures for the 5 codes and the Bullfrog. Those documents are very far along, or in their final editing phases. It'll be great to have those documents in place for all of the SDR assets, or the mobile comm assets of the SDRs. But on top of that, OEC has awarded us an additional TA to beta test a video SOP for one of the codes, and so we'll be next week up in Gila County doing the videotaping of that. How to deploy the code, what are the assets, how to turn the power on, extend out the antennas and the balance supports, etc. Further, the Navajo Nation has been working with our office and OEC to begin to look at a lot of different TA opportunities that might assist the nation up there. This comes from there being one of a number of tribes across this country to complete their NECP Goal 2 requirements, and so we're working with the emergency manager with the Navajo Nation, Rose Whitehair, on getting them some technical assistance as well, and I look forward to working with them on interoperable communications issues. With that, I'm going to leave the rest of the project updates here for you to look through. We do produce this document monthly, and it's on our website, so if even in the months where we don't hold the meeting, we do post this up there. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we did have one
comment card? Excellent, thank you. So before we get out of here, I have a comment card from David Felix. Excellent, thank you.
Take me longer to walk up here than the property type. I was just going to recommend a couple of agenda items for the future.
You bet.
Obviously, with the Yarnell fire impacting virtually the entire state, I had an opportunity to be up there, actually with my wife with 100 Club, and watched Mike Worrell work, really, I think, as a COML in that incident, and how they used interoperable communications resources to support that event. Not so much on the fire ground, but everything that ensued afterwards. And I thought that would be really interesting, probably to hear from Mike or Jesse Cooper, who had a piece of that in one of the resources that the RWC provided for the city of Mesa. That was one thing, and I'm sure that will maybe be something that comes around. And then the second thing was I wanted to brief the commission on we hosted an Arizona Public Safety Radio Communications Administrators Forum about 3 weeks ago, maybe almost 4 weeks ago, and I wanted to report on the results of that. We had representatives from Flagstaff, Yuma, RWC, TRWC, PC Win, Maricopa County, and DPS at that. And really just sort of providing a baseline of where we all at, information that came out of that, and then really a focus that kind of ties back to the incident with Yarnell, and that the state infrastructure, potentially in the future, being able to provide communications in those areas that these regional systems are never going to touch. So I would like an opportunity to do that with you, probably take 10 or 15 minutes to give you that overview, and I think that would be very helpful and some good information for the group.
Great, excellent.
Okay.
Thank you very much, David. Any other comments or questions from the board? With that, I would take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, David. Thank you, Steve. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.